Hello guys, I'm Tom, and today we're going to look at what the Simian Flu is. In the most recent Planet of the Apes trilogy, one of the most unsettling yet fascinating storylines is that of the ALZ-113 virus, a lethal pathogen that triggered the so-called Simian Flu and brought humanity to the brink of extinction. This virus not only wiped out nearly 90% of the world's population, but also radically transformed the balance of power on the planet, paving the way for apes, with their enhanced intelligence, to become the dominant species. What makes ALZ-113 particularly disturbing is its double-edged nature. While it devastates the human population, it enhances the intelligence of infected apes, granting them much more advanced cognitive abilities. This dual effect changes not only the biological landscape, but also the social and political fabric of a world on the edge of collapse. One especially chilling detail, barely explored in the movie War for the Planet of the Apes, gains much more depth in the official comics that serve as a prequel and expansion of the universe. They reveal how the virus evolved and drove the surviving humans into an almost prehistoric state. Those few who physically survived the outbreak gradually lost the ability to speak, reason, and sustain civilization as we knew it. The virus not only killed, but also degraded cognitive functions, until humanity was reduced to a primitive level. That's why, in Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, we see the last human groups turned into mere shadows of their former glory, living as nomads without culture or advanced language, hunted by increasingly organized ape clans and the relentless army led by Proximus Caesar. This slow but inexorable decline of humanity raises unsettling questions about evolution, survival, and the cost of progress. In this video, I invite you to dive deep into the story of ALZ-113, its origin, spread, and the two main variants that marked a before and after in our species history, ALZ-112 and ALZ-113. We'll dissect how these viruses impacted apes and humans in such opposite ways, and we'll connect each piece of the puzzle with the revelations offered by the official comics, thus expanding our understanding of the saga's universe. It all started in the Genesis laboratories in San Francisco, where Dr. Rodman developed a retrovirus hoping to reverse neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's. The first version, ALZ-112, was tested on chimpanzees with promising results. It repaired damaged brain tissue and significantly improved cognitive functions. However, this scientific breakthrough was overshadowed by a tragic incident when Bright Eyes, a chimpanzee exposed to the virus, suffered a violent reaction during a public demonstration and was shot to contain the situation. From that tragedy arose Caesar, Bright Eyes' son, who inherited his mother's enhanced intelligence. Motivated by the hope of saving his own father, Charles, Will secretly administered ALZ-112 to him, managing to temporarily restore his lucidity. But Charles's immune system reacted violently, attacking the regenerated cells and causing a rapid worsening of the disease. This setback led Will to perfect the formula, giving rise to ALZ-113. ALZ-113 turned out to be an even more aggressive and potent variant. For apes, it was a true evolutionary blessing, capable of rapidly regenerating the cerebral cortex and boosting intelligence to astonishing levels. For humans, however, it meant a death sentence. It triggered a lethal immune response, hemorrhagic fever, and death within days. A fortunate accident unleashed it into the world. Robert Franklin, a Genesis technician, unknowingly became infected and, while seeking help, passed it to his neighbor, pilot Douglas Hoskins. Thanks to Hoskins' international travels, the virus spread with devastating speed, traveling from San Francisco to Paris, Chad, Asia, and back again, unleashing the pandemic that would forever change history. Thus was born the dreaded Simian Flu, which wiped out humanity within months. Only a small percentage, approximately 10% of the population, showed some initial resistance, but as the comics reveal, and Colonel McCulla confirms in the third film, even these survivors carried the virus in a latent form, a constant threat to the human species. 5 years after the outbreak, half of humanity had disappeared. In just a decade, civilization as we knew it collapsed. Only small, isolated groups remained, theoretically immune, along with scattered remnants of armies and laboratories trying to prevent total extinction. The war between apes and humans unleashed a new nightmare. Yelzy, 113 continued mutating. The comics expand on this story, revealing that while the world was falling apart, 2 labs kept working against the clock. One, located in Atlanta, Georgia, under Dr. Sherlin's direction, experimented on intelligent ape infants. To advance their research, they needed adults, but scarcity of resources and instability forced them to sacrifice specimens after every discovery. Sherlin discovered that the virus could not be transmitted directly from apes to humans, but altered primate genetics in surprising ways, providing valuable clues for a possible cure. Simultaneously, in Portland, Oregon, a doctor identified that the retrovirus was naturally continuing to adapt. Her greatest fear was that this new mutation would slowly erode the minds of immune humans, driving them into a state where they lost speech, reason, and humanity without actually killing them. There, an experimental vaccine was being developed, while the threat of the mysterious Alpha Omega unit cast doubt on the true intentions of those promising to save humanity. A truly disturbing and little explored aspect of the virus's spread, developed in parallel with great detail in the official comic pages, is how certain apes, including the enigmatic and solitary Bad Ape, end up becoming unexpected vectors of the infection. In a scene as brutal as it is symbolic, Bad Ape transmits the virus to a woman who was helping her boss at a zoo. What seemed like a simple encounter turns into a fatal turning point. When the woman tries to defend herself from Bad Ape, she strikes him, and, in a moment of carelessness, rips off the gas mask that kept the ape isolated from the outside world. That simple action unleashes an immediate death sentence for her. Almost instantly, she begins coughing violently and uncontrollably. Blood flows from her nose, mouth, and even her eyes within minutes. This particular mutation of Yelzy, 113, the product of an unexpected natural evolution, does not necessarily increase the death rate, but it multiplies the ferocity with which the virus devours the body, causing extreme hemorrhages and a rapid physical collapse. In another parallel thread of this tragedy, the arrival of the relentless Colonel McCulla and his squad at the research facilities in Oregon makes it clear that there is no longer room for uncertainty or compassion. McCulla, with his characteristic coldness and unwavering determination, confronts the lead doctor with an uncomfortable truth. While she spent years locked away among microscopes and analyses, the entire world outside was crumbling under the weight of the pandemic. For him, the true enemy is not the apes, nor even the war between species, but that cruel virus, the infamous Simian Flu, that is driving humanity toward extinction. His worst nightmare is not the fall itself, but the palpable evidence before his eyes. San Francisco, once a vibrant human city, has now become a stronghold dominated by primates who are increasingly organized, conscious, and, in an ironic and painful way, more human than humans themselves. Unfazed by McCulla's harshness, the scientist responds with a fierce conviction found only in those who understand the magnitude of the disaster. What they are doing in that laboratory is vital for humanity's survival. The virus has not stopped evolving, and every second counts to understand the new infectious wave approaching with unstoppable force. At that moment, as a cruel sign of the latent threat, a trickle of blood begins to escape from her nose. Despite the personal danger, she insists, that stopping the research would be tantamount to surrendering without a fight. But these words only unleash McCulla's contained fury, and he explodes in uncontrollable rage. He accuses her of prolonging the root of the evil and of putting everything left of the human species at risk. Without hesitation, he orders that all captive apes be executed to prevent the infection from spreading further. The doctor, broken and sobbing, pleads for mercy, but for McCulla there is no room for doubt. In his view, the blame lies with them, the scientists who played God and must now pay the price of their arrogance in blood. Meanwhile, across the country in Atlanta, Georgia, Dr. Burke fights his own battle against despair and exhaustion. In constant contact with his colleague in Oregon, Dr. Rads, Burke admits, with a voice heavy with fatigue, that he has reviewed every last detail of the available information about this twisted mutation of the virus. He has discovered a terrifying fact. The variant now attacks the human brain's frontal lobe directly. Although they do not yet fully understand the extent of this attack, they know that if this theory is confirmed, the minds of the infected will literally fall apart from within. Despite everything, Burke tries to keep a spark of hope alive, reminding Rads of their shared mantra. Do not lose faith. Resist until the last breath, because maybe, just maybe, there is still a chance for salvation. But reality imposes itself with ruthless cruelty. McCulla gathers all the scientists at the base and watches, almost with contempt, as Dr. Rads begins to bleed visibly from her nose and mouth. For him, there is no doubt, they are all ticking time bombs, human incubators of a pandemic that seems endless. What was supposed to be the last line of defense, the desperate search for a cure, has become the fertile womb of the monster destroying the world. Furious and convinced that the only possible solution is to eliminate the problem at its root, McCulla points his gun and executes Rads, ordering the immediate liquidation of the rest of the team. Each body must be incinerated to ensure that not a single fragment of the mutated virus can survive. When it's over, his next move is clear. Return to San Francisco and wipe out every intelligent ape he finds, determined to save what remains of humanity, even if it requires violence and extermination. Meanwhile, at the other end of the country, Burke collapses into a bitter confession. He has been unable to contact Portland for 2 weeks. At first, he blames radio failures, but deep down he knows hope has vanished. He speaks with his colleague Serlin, who remains locked behind glass, a shadow of his former self. Serlin bleeds from nose and mouth and can barely stand. Once a brilliant scientist, he is now a man trapped in a body that betrays him. Between stammering and struggling to communicate something, Serlin reveals the worst news. This strain of the virus destroys the cerebral cortex unpredictably and brutally. Burke, dismayed, realizes he is no longer speaking to Serlin, but to a ghostly echo of who he once was. In a last desperate act, Burke tries once more to contact Portland. Absolute silence. Only ashes and human memories remain. He knows that the virus, although it does not kill immediately, destroys the most valuable essence of what makes us human, the mind, language, and the capacity to reason. Irony consumes him from within. Surrounded by apes, he is apparently immune, but also completely alone, carrying a secret that no one else will ever hear. Amid documents and records, he tries to convince himself that there is still a chance, but finally surrenders, broken by the certainty that salvation no longer exists. In the midst of that deep chasm of despair, an old chimpanzee, leader of his clan, violently bursts into the laboratory. His fury is the eruption of a wild, primitive world. He tears down doors, frees the captive apes, and finds Burke. Fate, cruel and symbolic, closes with the fall of the last thread of hope. Burke dies under the fury of those who, ironically, were supposed to be the key to the cure. The apes escape free, while Burke's lifeless body remains as a mute testimony to absolute failure. This part of the story underscores a chilling fact. Even with such a deadly and contagious virus, there were humans like Burke who never became fully ill. Others, like Dr. Rads, showed symptoms but never completely lost their minds or their ability to communicate. This nuance confirms the existence of a tiny percentage of people with some resistance to the mutation, something made evident in Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes with characters like May or Trevathan, humans who still retain full consciousness. The great secret behind this viral nightmare is that ALZ-113, in its mutated form, becomes a devastating autoimmune attack. The human body, in attempting to repair infected brain cells, ends up destroying them, wiping out the ability to speak, think, and reason, a wild, accelerated Alzheimer's. For some, it means regression to absolute brutality. For others, a conscious and eternal silence, a relentless ending that forces us to face what we once were and what, perhaps, we were always destined to become again.